Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokemon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokemon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Koffee Talks podcast. Here with David Person as usual, and unexpectedly here with another David Cohen, Pokemon World Champion. I guess David sprung this one on me midweek, so that's why we didn't mention it in the last episode. Just got a random text, hey, we have a guest this week. So, hey guys, David Cohen. This is going to be so confusing, the whole episode. How are you doing?
Hey, good. Thank you for having
stop.
me.
Just a minute. Wait a minute. Nope. We have to before we get right into David Cohen, who's so important for us to get into, we have to introduce why this very special person is on the podcast with us. So I'm going to do that very quickly. What I'm going to say I'm going to say that last week when we had Radar on, John Stibich, he talked about the fact that in today's world of Pokemon, that how few people know what we call the OGs, right? And we talked about that with Rusty and collecting, and that goes to a lot of the players as well. And then you dovetail that with Dan's comments in the past about how the success of a game, a long-term success of a game like the Pokemon trading card game, is so dependent on the players and the game itself and the continued evolution of the game and the players wanting to be involved in the game. And so those two things are in the back of my mind when I'm searching through one of the Facebook groups, because I have nothing better to do at night. I don't have a great relationship with my wife. Most people in the community of Pokemon have kind of just, ostracized me. And I see this stuff about one of my good friends named David Cohen, he doesn't want to be poor anymore. And I'm like, what happened to the poor guy? Am I going to find him homeless on the streets of San Francisco? What's going on right now? And so I said, this is a great opportunity for us to get him on and find out what the heck's going on with this guy. Let the world know about him and his previous past in the hobby, which I'm so lucky to be a part of. And so here we are. So now, Mr. David Cohen, if you would go ahead and give us a bit of an introduction about yourself and tell people why are you important to this game? I think you're very important to the history of Pokemon, but it's great to have you on. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Again, yeah, thank you guys for both having me. I'm always excited to reconnect with bits of the Pokemon community and do these sorts of things because, like you said, when you say, potentially an OG, to me, that means, I'm potentially just a faded star. I'm no longer in the limelight. So, how many people know my name? I don't really know these days, but I was for a time, I had decent competitive success. I was second place in seniors in 2009 in Worlds, and then 2 years later won the World Championships, 2011. So that was my claim to fame and my the highlight of my childhood to teenage life. And probably my highlight till today. That's the biggest thing I've accomplished for sure. So from there, basically like life is good. I'm just when you have a second place trophy and a first place trophy sitting next to each other, at a certain point you say, okay, do I really need the thing besides the first place? Like that's really important to me. So with the market as hot as the Pokemon market is, I was hoping I could just see what it could go for. So I did put my trophy, the second place trophy, up for auctions. That's what you saw with my Facebook post, just getting the word out there. But in no true life-changing poor conditions, fortunately. So we're doing good. But it'd be really fun to get back involved more with the community at a certain point. I know that there is still a lot of players that I see from a decade or more ago who are still winning tournaments and doing really well. So that gives me hope that if I find the time to just kind of get back in now that tournaments are a little more normal post COVID, it could be a lot of fun if I can find some capacity to do that. But yeah, love retouching with the world.
Yeah. The big thing is all the players in your area now work for TPCI, so you're one of you're one of the few from you guys are all from Washington State, where TPCI was, but that whole group that was playing back then, you're one of the few that isn't actually working at TPCI. For people who don't know, I'll give a bit of history. I actually met both of these Davids at the same time. The first time I met you both in person was Worlds 2010 out in Hawaii. But I knew Cohen quite well online because through Kenny Wisdom. I was really good friends with Kenny Wisdom at the time. We were really, really close. So I was chatting with Kenny and a lot of the Washington State players at the time. But that most of that group that we chatted with are now all working for TPCI. So that is a bit of history to how long I've known both of these people. And I don't know if I'm guessing, well, Cohen, you probably realize this. Other David, you probably have no idea. This is now a call, David, with the two people who own your trophy cards. I'm sure you remembered that. David has your number 1, I have your number 2 trophy card. Which is why I was saying on Facebook, I wish I had the money to be making real offers on some of the items that you're selling, just because I already own the actual trophy card from that tournament. But I made that purchase back when Pokemon things were a lot cheaper, and I definitely can't make the offers. I will say, I'll put up some pictures on screen, obviously, of the things that are up for auction. We'll put a link to the auction in the description. But for me, it's the leather jacket is the coolest item that you're selling. Even over the physical trophy, that leather jacket is so sweet.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we just do the entire podcast in 4 minutes? Let's just go from the beginning to the end. Let's not build out any history or how the kid is doing, or, let's just, okay, he won some stuff, there's an auction, go home. No, we're not doing that, guys. Slow it all down. I got way too many questions for this wonderful man that I know. So let's go back to the work.
I'm making sure. I am making sure that we get in the basic details. I'm making sure that the basic details are in there before you go off on a 30-minute tangent trying to get David married to one of your children. I just need to make sure that there's enough context for people to keep watching this thing.
That makes sense. And really, we do want to try to tease him a little bit early, but you know what? Just looking at the guy's, the Yiddish word is punim. So looking at that, handsome face, we know that it's all good. So, all right. So, Mr. Cohen, what could you possibly, being that this was like your first year of Masters at that point, could you have been maybe the youngest Masters champion ever? I mean, I never thought about that, but it wouldn't surprise me if you were.
Well, I did the math on that. So it was my second year of Masters, but at the time I was the youngest, and I was like, that's pretty cool by a significant margin, because like you said, most of the players winning, they'd be either like 20s, young 20s, something like that, a little more time to I guess develop. Like your brain continues to get better and better. I guess my brain peaked at 16. So, but a year later, the man who won was like 4 months younger than me or something like that. So it was a very short title that I had. But it was I probably still the youngest American winner, but I'd have to go double check some of the more recent years.
Wow, that's fantastic. And of course, one of the things that you were so well known for back then, I mean, it was so. You were basically, I don't know what the word is, but you had an aura, you had a flamboyance about you. Where did that all come from? If we, maybe Dan, go find an old picture when you're doing editing this week and put a nice picture of Mr. Cohen up there. So
I don't think flamboyance is the word. Like emo kid, when you had your successes, you were a big emo kid. I don't think flamboyance is the word for 2011 Cohen.
I'd say there's elements of it can be elements of it all. I've always had an outgoing personality, and so but at the time coming from my kind of more shy childhood, the way that I started to express myself was like you said, the kind of the emo looks, the rock star looks, the stuff like that. So that probably helped me come out of my shell a little bit, in the sense that when you have cool hair or whatever, it makes you feel more confident, right? And so 2011, that was the cool, right?
Can confirm.
Yeah, exactly. So that helped me grow a little bit in combination with obviously Pokemon helping, it helps young kids grow. Like it help me get more social, help me, sharpen my strategic competitive side of my brain. And once you get good at something, obviously you get more confident as well. So just like being in an environment of something that I knew I was good at, uh, that kind of gives you a different aura, like you said, much greater confidence. The hair did die pretty quickly after that. I believe it was only like I won, and there's all those pictures of me still with like kind of the rock star emo haircut. And then 3 months later, so I was like, I'm bored of this, and so I cut my hair in pretty much the same kind of style I've had ever since, just like short, normal. um, but maybe that's reflective of like I'd achieved that goal. I'd achieved that, like, I have that confidence in life, and I was like, I don't need the hair anymore. I can shed it. I'm a world champ now. I can be my own man and go back to not having to like straighten my hair for 30 minutes every morning. Um,
And
but
how
it's a
long
piece
did
of
you
history.
how long did you go on after that in the game? How long did you continue to play before you kind of put it aside and said, and a lot of people don't ever put it aside and say I'm an adult now, but when did you sort of say that and say I've got other things I'm going to do?
Yeah, really. I mean, it comes from the competitive part of me where like over the next year, both times that I kind of got second, got first, and got the auto invite, it was just hard for me to apply myself over the next year. So I did really bad like in 2010, for example, because I didn't have to like try that year since I had the invite. But then 2011, obviously, I kind of got back in the saddle. So I mean, almost immediately after that, my competitive kind of edge deteriorated a bit. Like I just didn't put as much time into it the very next year, and so my world's performance in 2012 was pretty weak overall. And then after that, that was the year then that I went to college after that, and I still tried to play, but my problem was again just not investing the time that I needed to be consistently, um, knowing what to do in every situation. That was my big problem. So the next 3 years gave me a big taste in like I would show up to a regionals event, for example, and I might have a deck that someone gave me that I still had some knowledge of, but I'd come into situations where like I would, have these cards in my hand and I would not know the exact best move to do in that situation because that's what comes with the practice element. Like no amount of skill can kind of compensate for that. So over the next 3 or so years through college, like I'd still show up to events, but I just didn't take the time to practice in between and put the reps in. And so going to these events, even if I would somehow get into like a top 8 or a top 4, I would just be very unconfident in my own abilities. And then after that, it was just kind of like, if I didn't have the time to put in to really like be good and have an in and out understanding of, each season's meta, that there was less and less point to me doing it. Although I still like to show up, to reconnect with friends and stuff. And obviously then COVID kind of threw the wrench and all that, and so everyone's sort of on the on the recovery slope end from that. But I would say 3 years of on and off play afterwards, and then kind of like took the extended break that is still ongoing as of now.
Yeah, I think
What
we've talked a little bit on here before about old worlds prize money when we talked about the value of the trophies and stuff. A lot of players had that where if they top four worlds, they'd have a really bad next year because in the past, winning worlds, even selling the trophy cards and stuff, didn't anywhere near pay for what it cost to do a year of competitive Pokemon play because all of your actual prize money was scholarship money, and then the trophy card. I mean, you sold it was 5,000. I think David paid for
Mm-hmm.
your number one that year. That doesn't even begin to cover the cost of what it costs to do a competitive season. So a lot of people had that where it was like, oh well, it's not even just about not wanting to invest the time. It was like, oh, I don't have to invest the money to try and make it to Worlds again. So a lot of players were having that. Whereas now, obviously, winning Worlds is like a year's wages basically in cash,
Mm-hmm.
even without selling the trophy card. And regionals have cash payouts, and there's 4 ICs with cash payouts throughout the year. So now it's a lot easier for players now to have good back-to-back seasons, it seems, because they can keep that motivation up of there's still something for me to go for throughout the year. I can still push for this big prize money, even if I already got my Worlds invite.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll agree to that, and I'm gonna use that now mentally as my own like excuse to be like, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
because back then it was really just about like it was honor, it was fun, it was that, but yeah, without having the monetary drive, like you said, it would actually, yeah, it would have costed me a lot more money to like go to as many events and be as competitive as I could possibly be, in a year where you have sort of an automatic invite, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, the trade-off wasn't there at the time because Pokemon just wasn't popular enough. They weren't sinking enough money into that kind of organized play element.
And
Yeah,
you know,
organized play
I,
was.
I
Go ahead, David.
recently had Tord. I was just going to say I had Tord here, who was Tord Reklev is, I don't know, Dan will tell you what he won or didn't win
Hmm.
recently, but we know he came in second in this year's Worlds, but so he
Hmm.
was here in Vegas and was doing a card transaction with me, and I sat down with him for a while and just talked about it, and I said the same thing. I said, how do you stay motivated when you have an automatic invite? You have more points than anybody in the world when it comes to competitive play, and he said, because I'm just such a competitive person. And I think that because of all the people that look at him and count on him, he said, people expect me to keep my points where they are and sort of stay ahead of everybody else. So, but of course, it is a point now where he's able to make money full time in
Hmm.
just doing Pokemon, not only because of the winning, but he's also doing coaching. So a
Hmm.
lot of players that are really good have been able to turn that into some coaching prowess and financial success by being able to partake their wisdom to other people on a one-on-one basis. So it
Yeah,
has changed quite a bit.
things like coaching and then sponsorships just weren't a thing back then either.
Hmm.
Stores will now sponsor teams in their area, so stores will pay for teams to actually
Hmm.
travel to the events. If they're wearing their team jerseys with the store logos and stuff on. There's a lot of that in the game now, where stores will get the advertising, especially stores. They have online marketplaces, so it's great advertisement for them as a store. People buy from them because we're buying from the store that supports our favorite players. Kind of like what Channel Fireball and stuff have been doing in Magic for a long time. There was none of that back then. I think the World's 31 2011, it was the first one that had any sort of streaming coverage, and it wasn't official coverage. It was uh, the top cut,
Yeah.
Puka, Crims, etc. were just doing it off their
Hmm.
own back because TPCI wasn't willing at that point to invest in any sort of coverage because I guess they didn't know if it was going to be popular or not. But the Top Cut had been doing stuff for their own tournaments throughout the year and just I think sorted out TPCI and said, okay, let us do this one, let us set up and do the coverage. And they did, and then it was the year after that, I think, is when TPCI actually started putting their own coverage in just off the back of
Hmm.
that. But yeah, your times were just in the full dead zone for how much interest there was in Pokemon.
Yeah, it was really like there was the kind of, earlier peak in like what, when the game first came out, 2004,
Yeah,
2005, and then it was, yeah, really like down. And then it wasn't until, I mean, it was kind of just after I quit though that I even recognized that like the prize money started shooting up like crazy. Cause even by 2015, when Jacob won, I remember it was like up to something like 30 grand or something for winning.
yeah. So it
And
was
I was like, holy crap, I
25,
got a
30 when
$7,500 scholarship, and that was it. So just, yeah, it goes to show
yeah.
like how crazy, yeah, popular it started becoming, and it's just continued to, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
go from
I
there.
think the Top Cut streaming that event is a big part of it because as soon as you can get those eyes on it online, it just brings up so much. But I've been saying people because people are talking about the size of worlds. That first world that we all met at in 2010, like that entire worlds was smaller than the Pokemon Center has been at the last two worlds. Like when we first saw the Pokemon Center in London, I was saying to people like I have been to world championships that were smaller than this room. That is just the store. Like it was crazy. I went back to Hawaii a couple of years ago with Laura. Back in the times when the World Championship was cancelled, we were on a family vacation in Hawaii, and we went over to Big Island. I said to Laura, "Oh, we'll go by the Hilton, and I'll show you where Worlds was." And I asked them to let me into the ballroom, and I was like, "Can you just let me in so I can show her?" And I was like, yeah, this was it. Like this was Worlds. Like there was nothing else here. There was this, and then there was like one little room that was the Pokemon Center off to the side. It is
Hmm.
just when you think back to just the size of that event compared to what we've had the last couple of years, it's unbelievable.
Well, I'm not, but you can say all you want, Dan. I don't care. I'm not going to let our audience sit here and listen and possibly think that your size evaluation is some commentary on David's winning, because you know what?
It's not.
And I know it's not, but you know what? I need to let it know. Maybe it's even more important because back then he was the best of the best when even nobody was know was supposed to what his best was supposed to be. So David, I don't care how small it was. You're still a fan favorite to me forever and ever. And I want to know what the difference is. I want to know if when you contemplate even for the smallest second going back into the game these days, which is so hard, to recreate anything when you've had that top level of success. Um, what did you do back then? Were you doing it on your own? Were you studying on your own? Were you part of a team of people, a group that would play against each other to try to figure out all those situations so they wouldn't be unexpected? And how would it be different today or the same today if you were to try to re-enter that same field with the same goal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question for me to pose to myself. Is like, yeah, how do I, get into it? Because like, I mean, the easiest thing I assume nowadays is like people can play test online, right? So that's a big difference just in terms of, again, it's like getting those reps in against decks and players that you can be confident that you're actually getting quality practice, right? I mean, it's just like, uh, I didn't get a whole lot out of going to a family league, for example, and playing against like community and people there, just because the quality of reps I was getting was not conducive to like helping me learn, what it is to play against like really good players and stuff. So I did a just a like Dana kind of spoke to earlier. The nature of the Pacific Northwest was there was a lot of really high quality players, and so I didn't have like a team or anything, but I just was friends with a lot of people. So just throughout like either more consistently spending time with people and being able to just spend a whole Saturday playing or whatever, or going to more events in general, because those kind of the events throughout the season sort of is the practice for some of the bigger events, right? So you get a little bit of both. You don't even need to spend too much time doing outside practice, so to say. But I think nowadays I would try to take advantage of the online component, although I don't know how successful I would be, because even in my days, the online component existed. There was tools you could use, and I just didn't get as much out of it. Like part of me needs the in person, the body language, the ability to actually sort of read the opponent, poker style, but also like I just like holding cards in my hand and stuff. So the online is inevitably going to be a little bit harder for me to like connect with, and I don't even know if that's the route I would go. But I do know that like at least nowadays I do know there is still a pretty good network of people who actually go and practice, and there are a lot of the community still goes to like a couple card shops. It's almost more centralized than it used to be. So it would almost be easier to get back into because the community is actually centralized into one or two local shops in the sort of greater Seattle area. Whereas back when I was playing, there was like a ton of different shops all throughout, various suburbs and parts of the main city. And in a city like Seattle, getting out to these places can be like an hour or 2 hours sometimes. So having something that's more centralized, it would actually probably make it a lot easier for me. Um, but that was, yeah, the biggest thing again is just like I know that if I was to get back into it, I need the consistent practice. Like for me, it's quantity over quality. It's like I don't just look at cards, look at a deck, look at the opponent's deck, and instantly like read a situation. For me, it comes from almost memorization. It comes from knowing what to do in each scenario. Knowing the odds of like, okay, well the opponent is probably only playing probably playing this with a variance of like maybe 5 cards here, but the likelihood of them having one or two of these other tech cards that could throw a wrench in my strategy is low or high or whatever. So just knowing the ins and outs of every situation is like what I need to do, because I almost feel like I don't have a natural strategic talent, but I do have kind of a natural memorization. And then once I figure out what the best strategies are for certain situations, then I can kind of adapt those to other places. But yeah, to answer the main question again, just the community, right? That's the strongest part. That's going to be for anybody. That's my advice to anybody out there. Is like, you can't just do it alone. You have to, like, you don't need a team, but you just have to find a consistent group of, like, a place you can go where you're playing good quality players, which I'm sure there's a ton of nowadays. Um, that's the way to succeed. Get into it.
Yeah, not to plug my other projects, but I did mention on my current Lorcana podcast, Quest for 20, and find on Spotify now. Me and my friend Jordan were talking about, someone was saying that they were trying to get better at that game and were going to 4 or 5 leagues a week and just repping as many games as they could. And they were asking for more advice. And I said, don't go to 4 or 5 leagues a week. Find 1 or 2 that have the better players. Like 2 hours of testing against good players is better than 10 hours of testing against a lower quality of players. I will say, David, I don't know how much free time you currently have, but I think you would smash streaming. I think if you decided to stream playing the online game, I think you'd get a lot of views. I think you have the right personality to be able to keep people interested in a stream. I think you have, you'd be talking out your decisions as you were making them while you were playing, because you'd be talking to your chat, and then, obviously go into the YouTube side of it, just upload the VODs to YouTube as well. But I think a lot of people will be interested in watching the stream, hearing your thought process and stuff as you were playing. And that could potentially be a way to keep you interested in, and focused on playing the online game for testing, is if you've actually got that streaming aspect of it and the talking to people. I think that's something you should consider if you're trying to get back into it. I think you'd be a really, really good fit for doing Twitch streaming for playing the online game.
Well, what's nice is this is really a very special moment for our viewers, Dan, Coffee Talk, because the thing is, when have you ever given out career advice? I mean, you've basically been an unemployed podcaster for almost 3 to 6 years now, and so this is wonderful. We can't get you a job, but let's get David a job. I love that. The self-sacrificing nature of you, just the humility. No matter the color of your hair, you're a wonderful man, Dan Norton. So thank you for that.
I mean, it would be a great idea, because I'd be suggesting he does what I try to do, but he would be starting off with like talent and recognition, so he'd have a much easier time of doing it. Whereas I started off as like some nobody who just knows stuff about cards, and anyone can just look that up. Whereas actually being able to play the game well is something that you have to learn and is more interesting to watch over and over again. So, well, that's where we're at with that.
That's true. And I will say one thing, just because, again, not to deflect too much, because it's really David's show, but when Tord was here, I had a chance to ask him about what does he do with respect to playing with others, having a group of folks that he associates with, because you often see that it's team oriented, like we talked about. He does none of that at all. He does everything against himself. So he's in his own mind building, okay, I would do this, then if this happens, I need to alter this way, I'd have to adjust my course, etc. So what that tells me is, of course, there's so many different ways to achieve success. And it really depends on what your own mind and how your own brain works. And David, you alluded to that when you're talking about, hey, I'm more of a memorization guy than somebody else is going to do it a different way, etc. So everybody's kind of got their strength alongside it, but you don't have to do it as part of a community. You don't have to do it as part of a test group. You can also apparently be very successful doing it on your own. I want to transition. David, talk a little bit about what you do for a living, because to me, the whole notion of data science and all of the kind of analysis, sort of integrates very well with maybe what some of your strengths are, just mentally, and how you had success in the game as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in terms of career, like for one, I wanted to say earlier just about like how impressed I am that because of the popularity of Pokemon, right? People can have careers, like you were saying, like we're talking about, that are just within Pokemon, right? Like that was never a thing in 2011, but now, yeah, people can I've seen coaching and stuff like that. Like that's a crazy concept to me, and so like that. And again, yeah, all these things maybe are stuff that I would love to do, still the opportunity to do, but probably would have been able to get more into had I come up in a slightly different, timeline or whatever. and thought of these things as options. But yeah, so for my career, I'm a senior data scientist at another gaming company. It's called geocaching. So people may have heard of that, but it's they call it an online treasure hunt, but it's sort of real world. It's like Pokemon Go, location based. You go to a place, and then instead of getting a Pokemon, you find like an actual container someone's hidden. So it's a cool concept, but yeah, the way that I was attracted to it was like you said, a lot of it ties back to what honestly I learned during my time in Pokemon of like, okay, I enjoy analysis, right? Enjoy, I call it strategic because it is still strategic from a business sense. But it translates, yeah, back to and from Pokemon because it's like you want to analyze situations, you want to analyze overall numbers, you're weighing out odds, you're weighing out, calculations and stuff like that. And honestly, like there probably is a world where like especially nowadays with the crazy stuff people do within the game, I'm sure there's like straight up data analysis that could be performed of like here's finding the technical best action to perform in a given circumstance. It's like analyzing chess moves. I'm sure that's a thing that's way too far beyond what I would ever try and figure out how to do, but I'm sure that someone will someday figure out how to analyze the game in that capacity. But it really does, like, I think about Pokemon quite a bit. I think about the game quite a bit, even throughout my job, like you said, because there's so many things that sort of tie back to it. Plus, I'm always thinking about Pokemon Go from like a sense of like, how do I make my business more successful like Pokemon Go? But I do think that this is sort of my own tangent, but this is just like when I was coming up in the game, I did feel like there was certain ways that people think that can either cap their progress within Pokemon competitively or allow them to like, just bust through it. And because you could kind of see that amongst different people. And I've always been curious about this from like an anthropological perspective of like trying to figure out what makes someone good at Pokemon, like what gives someone what are the characteristics that represent the talent you need to be good at like Pokemon or other card games? Because I did see that there was people who were just like they were kind of at the same level forever, like they were never able to advance in terms of building, strategizing better deck lists or even strategize like figuring out what to do in certain situations any better. So I'm grateful that it seems like I had whatever thing in my brain allowed me to like pick up and continue learning and progressing throughout Pokemon, getting better. And I wasn't just capped somewhere, but I've always been curious, like, what is that, and is it the same stuff that draws me to like my career path? Again, maybe there's gonna be a Pokemon psychologist job someday. There's money everywhere in Pokemon, so I'm sure there's something out there.
I mean, Kenny always did say back in the day, he said he felt if you were putting your mind to it, you were the best player in the world. Like, if you were in the zone where you were ready to put in the reps with any specific deck, he said your biggest strength is if a deck needed tested, and they were like, David, can you just sit down and play 100 games with this deck and figure out if it's good? You'd be able to do it. You wouldn't be the person who got bored after 10 games and say, I want to jump to a different deck now. You could put in the reps with one deck when you needed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have memories of that. I mean, I guess some of that's blocked out in a way because it's just like I know I put in so many reps, but when I think about my memories of Pokemon, I don't remember the practices, but I know that like I was doing it. But I remember obviously the in tournament, when the emotions are a little bit higher. But I know for a fact, just like I've been talking about this whole time, that like there was that element that had to be done, and I remember just doing it, but I just can't remember the being in that specific circumstance. But that's high praise. I like to hear that. That makes my boost my ego quite a bit. There's so many good players nowadays. I'm very curious, like how I would stack up if I actually put in the time. Which now this is probably honestly the best time in my life to do so. Like I have a lot of free time. I have a comfortable income. I have enough expendable income and not a lot of like current family priorities because I don't have any children or anything yet. So I don't know. We'll see. I was very curious what the tournament structure is going to look like this year, and then see if I want to dabble back in or even next year if it looks like it's been fun this year. We'll see.
Yeah, and the way the tournament structure works now compared to the old days, it's not. you can skip a tournament or two. Like back in the old days, because it built up where you'd have the first 6 to 8 months of the year were smaller tournaments that essentially didn't really matter. You could skip all of cities and states, but then you had to hit the regionals and the nationals weekends to try if you wanted to get to Worlds. You basically couldn't get there just on states and stuff alone. So you had that like 3-month block at the end of the year where it was like, oh, I have to be doing stuff as much as I can this time. Now with all the regionals and the IC spread out, there is a lot more options now of just, okay, I have this month free, like I have November free, I can hammer it in November and see where my points are at. If I have to take a month off here or I have to take some weekends off here, there are always options at other times. So I think it's a really good time for Pokemon for anyone who wants to try and get into it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know that, I mean, during COVID, like it really didn't appeal to me because even though I had obviously maybe a little bit more free time, I was seeing that like, oh, it was just like you have to go to this giant event and do well, which is just like I never did well at a nationals. I hated going to nationals because like
Okay.
it's just like a crapshoot when you have those kind of numbers. Like I was so much better at scaling through the local tournaments, where again I guess quantity over quality for me. Like I could do better, consistently with like certain average performances rather than try to like do well at like 1 or 2 giant regional events. I know that even the regionals in the States, though, are massive nowadays. I believe the Northwest one just happened sometime recently, or maybe that was last year's that just happened. I don't know. But I would be curious to, I really want to I just want to feel what it's like. I want to get back in. I want to sit down in a room full of all these people. I know it costs like $100 to enter nowadays, but, I want to see how I stack up. You guys are lighting the fire. I'm just
Well,
curious.
it's so funny when you talk about that because one of the many things I do, which is unfortunate, other than upset people just by listening to my podcast, is I'm a basketball coach, and there's always these arguments, right? Who's the GOAT? And was it Jordan? Was it Kobe? Was it Magic? Whoever? And you don't have a way of comparing those because there's different eras, and of course, different eras bring different types of play and different strategies of play, and especially in card games. But with Tord saying, hey, I've been doing this for a while and I'm one of the ones that's consistently playing now. And now I had a call this last week from somebody who I used to be involved with 12 or 13 years ago out of the blue. And we used to build sets together in my interim years between when I started buying sets from a lady that built them for me. And then in the later years, she's now building them again. So his name was Richard Armstrong, and his son was a player on the competitive scene named Clint Armstrong, just in case you might know the name.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up being known for being a yo-yo world champion in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But he said to me, my son at 30 years old is looking at getting back into the game. So it's just really interesting. I think there might be a flow, as we talk about, with so much more money and prizes. I mean, I started telling Tord about these internationals where we're looking for cards that are one of a kind that we might be paying $10,000 for. He would never play those. He goes, whoops, maybe I might want to just jump out there every once in a while and see what's available to me so I could win some cards and get some money on that side as well. So there's, like Dan said, there's sort of money and opportunities and friendships to rekindle through all of it. So you wouldn't be the first one possibly saying, hey, I'm going to see how these strategies work and I'm going to jump back in and get a taste of it, And I think as long as you talk about where's that ceiling and you put your hand up and said like, this kind of thing, maybe as long as I don't think one person is hard on themselves and says, oh, I'm too afraid of failing because I already had the top pinnacle of success. I just want to test it out and see where it takes me. That's a great attitude and one that will probably position you for additional success. And I'm just going to keep talking. I don't get to talk much and I'll tell you why I don't get to talk much, folks, this week. So, because I spent $2,000 this week to upgrade my internet and I'm sitting back in the house again where I haven't been and nothing's working. So every time Dan and David stop talking, I have to figure out what they were saying for the last 12 minutes. And I'm a step behind. So my apologies sincerely to everyone, which just means when I'm going to talk, I'm just going to talk. I've talked so much at this point, I've forgotten what I was going to say, so now I'm throwing it back to Dan and David. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
All right, I need to just put a quick aside in there when for people who didn't see the podcast a couple of weeks ago, when David's talking about the international cards that are one of one and stuff. He's talking about the Asian series promos that are printed in English. We know that Todd does play in the other international championships and has won all of them. I don't think Todd is allowed to play in the Asian championships. I don't know. I think that's a completely separate tournament series. I think there's something to do with country residency. I have no idea. But
You're right.
I just don't want 1,000 comments of like, yeah, Todd does play in international championships. He's won like 10 of them. Just getting that on the ground. But I will say, in terms of the interest of like, the idea of people coming back, we've talked about in the podcast a few times. Mindy, the 2002 world champion, she came back to the game recently. She's had a lot of support and stuff on social media. People have been really excited to see the return of a 2002 world champion. So, it's out there. People are interested in seeing these stories. People are interested in seeing people return to the game after this amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool thought. Like, just like you said, people like Clint. Like, yeah, Clint was awesome. I know he achieved like success in yo-yo of all things, which is cool. But like to hear that other people in a similar sort of boat are coming back, I think that speaks to two things: A, the popularity of Pokemon now, and obviously the opportunities within it. But then even like part of it has got to be, I'm assuming, it's just worldwide, right? Like post-COVID kind of effect of just like people, wanting to get back into things that they did many years ago. You get a reinvigorated sort of social like aspect there, because people want to reinvolve themselves with these communities that like they probably would have just forgotten or ignored after a certain length of time. But I mean, COVID also was the cause of the Pokemon spike, right? Like the interest in both cards collecting and all that started with like I'm assuming the streaming world. But I know it was already kind of on the up before that too. But
yeah.
I think it would be really cool. It's exciting to think that people are keeping track of the history of Pokemon, right? Like Mindy won a championship in 2002. That's a long time ago. That's like a lot of people playing nowadays wouldn't have even been born then. And to think that there's that deep of a history of Pokemon, and that people are actually excited to be like, oh, these past characters, historical figures, regular people, like me, that there's interest in seeing them come back, is a cool concept. And again, just speaks to like, yeah, it would be cool to see what happens out there. I know I'm very curious what the average competitive level is nowadays, because part of me is like, well, you still see the same names from a decade or two ago topping all of these events, which means like in this amount of a time, this explosion that's happened, there still hasn't been that many people like ascending to this level of like these names that already existed, like Sam Chen and stuff. And so that part of me is, again, just curious, like, how does it feel to enter a tournament? Is the average competitive level like significantly higher, or is it actually like, does it average out to be like the same as when I played? Because like you said, it was kind of a quality over quantity back then, because even though, yeah, Worlds was smaller, the level of play, the people who were into it was insanely high. I'm curious, yeah, how it pans out.
Or has it been more diluted, right? In other words, the other side of
Right.
that, it's been more. Could it have been more diluted just because of the publicity and by
Mm-hmm.
the flourishing of the franchise, and because of the prize money and stuff, and so everybody's involved now. It's sort of like we know how many more people are collecting and or selling or trying to make money off of it. So it is interesting to think, yeah, what you'd encounter jumping back in. I'm going to say something just because you talk about Grail and that whole concept. And I like to every once in a while throw in something that I have that somebody else doesn't, because I have so few things that somebody else doesn't. But one thing I do have is a pre-release Raichu card. And, going back and building the provenance of that from a collector's standpoint and where that card came from and all of that. And you read those forum threads way back in the day when Dan was much more involved in it, and he should still be now, but I'm not going to talk about that because certain folks have, entered the fray and shouldn't have. So, anyways, when you look at the forum threads and you read that, what you realize is that everybody talked about that card as the Grail. Now, today, it's sort of not even is it not really talked about, it's sort of been forgotten. And that's Mindy, and that's you, David, and that's all of those things from not that long ago. Just really aren't coming out of folks' mouths because we're also into the here and the now and the social media and the small snippets of time and the quantities and who can make more money than the next one and more views. And so that small town kind of feel of just good and wholesome and whatever is just kind of fallen away in the rush. So yeah, I mean, it's why it's good. I guess it's good in the sense of folks that have earned their reasons and their prizes. And we're going to talk about what you have up for auction here in a bit. But you know, this is a great time to at least have the opportunity to monetize some of those things. You certainly earned it. But it's, you know, it's also sad to see that yeah, a lot of folks have just kind of forgotten all of that, and we move forward without history in a hobby that's not really that old. I mean, it's, what are we talking about? You know, 25 years or so. So.
Can I say, David, congratulations on breaking your own record for most tenuous way of bragging that you have a pre-release Raichu. Absolute
I didn't bring my
tenuous metaphor there.
Issues. I'm gonna cry right now, so I'm
Okay.
just gonna you guys just go on for a bit, okay? It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
It's
Come
all
on, ask our guest another question. It's like I say to Laura, don't pretend to cry because you're gonna make yourself really cry, and then it'll be awkward.
Fair enough. That's good. I wish I could. David, you mentioned no kids, no nothing. And you talked about, we were talking about when Dan said Mindy, I know she's not only just getting back involved, I think she's got kids involved as well. Tell us about your personal life, because I certainly want to know what's going on with your personal life, David.
Yeah. So I've been, so what am I now? 6 years out of college. So I've been working pretty much, I mean, like, I've been at this job, this career for quite a while. So 5.5 years or so. So haven't, moved career, like job locations in a while. So just kind of, stable on that front, still in the city of Seattle. I have a girlfriend of 4.5, 5 years now. We're thinking of moving in together out of the city of Seattle, trying to figure out where to move to, but probably, you know, out of Seattle, because buying a house is impossible in Seattle. So we don't we don't even think about that. Um, She's got a adorable golden retriever, 2 years old. So spend a lot of time with that dog. And then also, even at I still live in a house for rent with roommates, and they both have two dogs as well. So I just have dogs, so many dogs. I have dogs all around me. None of them are technically mine, which is nice, but I've got a lot of dogs to interact with at all times. But other than that, I mean, my main focus is just still as a hobby, but trying to get into like natural bodybuilding. And so I spend a lot of just my day-to-day time between, girlfriend, work, training, eating, etc. Have yet to, compete or do anything like that. But that's the what I sort of took up as a replacement for Pokemon. The downside to taking that up as a hobby is that the the ability to actually compete is so limited by time. Like I need 5, 10 years of development on my physical self in order to actually go out there. Whereas Pokemon, like I can get good and practice in 6 months and go test my metal. So there's room for both. Let's say that. But I do I want to continue pursuing bodybuilding and hopefully achieve something in that sport in the realm of my 30s to 40s. But we'll see. That's a very long term delayed gratification kind of thing. And in the interim, there might be some room for Pokemon. But I know, like you said, it's interesting, yeah, because I know Mindy has 2 or 3 kids, and so I'm sure some of them are playing with her. But obviously, being a parent and trying to balance getting back into a game, that's a lot of stuff that I don't know if I could do. But right now, we don't have kids, so like I do have that free time, the ability to spend money on myself traveling or whatever, and just myself if I need to. So there's certainly opportunities within both my social life, personal life, work life, etc., to open up this little gap of like, is there some Pokemon in there? We'll see. But I'm enjoying life all in all. We still got still got some time before I turn 30. We'll see what I can accomplish before that. In my teens, I was world champion of Pokemon. We'll see what I can do in my 20s and then my 30s.
Do you does your girlfriend lift as well? Does she train and do all that same stuff?
No, it's mostly a me hobby. She has her own hobbies, things she does. She goes swimming. Her main hobby is taking care of the dog. That's I think with a lot of people these days that can become its own lifestyle. It's just like this dog. This is my creature. I love
You
this thing.
you could do what my wife Laura did, which is buy 2 dogs and then go, no, I'm still going to travel. I'll leave my husband at home to watch the dogs, which is why I'm not in Peoria right now, because she still travels to
Hey,
control the regionals and I'm at home with the dogs. One quick comment
nice.
on the idea
That's
of
the way to do
the people with kids playing Pokemon. I think it was just a couple of months ago. Yamato announced that his son had won his
it.
first local Pokemon championships, his
Mm-hmm.
local I don't know what the Japanese tournaments are called, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the
the
equivalent
like
of
battle royale thing.
a league cup or something like that. His kid won his first one, which is very very cool.
Yeah, I did see that. I remember when his kid was born. Like I remember seeing that
Yeah,
post and
yeah.
being like, "Oh shoot!" Because like Yamato was, I assume the historical figures of Pokemon again. Like he was a historical figure even in the young days of
Oh
Pokemon
yeah.
2011. That would be a decade old or more. My fun little story is the day. So my world championship that I won. My first match was like down to the wire. My first match of the first day, the round robin tournament was against Yamato. So I sit down and I look at the match slip or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I'm playing against Yamato. I'm like, all right, like this stuff's for real right now. Like I got to get my A game on, and so I barely beat him on like with a last turn kind of play. Um, and I still remember to this day, like I'd strategized out this last play, and I did the thing. I had the actions, and then he was like, wait, no, you played 2 supporters, and I was like, I panicked for a moment. I was like, no, I didn't. Like my whole strategy hinged upon me being able to play this card, and I was like, for sure, I'm 100% sure. I'm still 100% sure I did not play a second supporter, but there was no way for either of us to prove it either way. So he was like, okay, I guess you're right. And so I was able to win off playing the fisherman supporter card to get the energy back. But I'm very sure I did not play another supporter because I'd been strategizing using that fisherman the whole turn. I'd just done a lot of stuff. But
Yeah.
that was so the start of that, and then after that it was pretty much smooth sailing until the top two against Ross.
Nice. I've said a few times that final game between watching you and Ross in that final game, that was like one of my best memories in Pokemon. Is just I was sitting with like all of the Seattle people watching that, because obviously there was everyone obviously knew both you and Ross. You both from like a similar area, so there was all the
Mm-hmm.
people we knew, and then all of X Files were there as well. Just what, and then when it went to sudden death in that last game, it was like the tension was just so high, and then it was just like an unbelievable feeling when everyone's like jumping up and screaming. It was such a good moment, that tournament.
So that, yeah, I mean, I'm glad the match was as exciting for people to watch, because I know that the other matches that particular day were over pretty quick. So like people were tuned in. Uh, that could have so easily gone poorly because I did not wear a watch at the time, which thinking back is like the dumbest thing to not do because like knowing when the hour mark was going to come up is so important. And I just didn't bother to watch. I was like, I can just feel out the time. And so I managed to win. Like it was a really long first game, managed to win that. Uh, know that I would pretty much lose the second game because he would be able to choose to go first. And in that time with our matchup, it was really about just who went first won, like who was able to evolve their stuff first, pretty much won. Um, and so second match, I was just kind of playing it out, but knew I would lose, and then I was planning to like concede so I could choose to go first on the final time, because that should give me a good chance of victory. So I was doing that. I was like, I'm sure there's a little bit of time left here, and they called time before I'd conceded, and I was like, oh, oh, that's not good. So then it goes down to the coin flip, right? And so with that coin flip, that's like I get nervous still thinking about that because that coin flip like determined the entire outcome. Like we both had pretty much the hands that we needed, and so whoever went first was winning that first prize. And I completely blew my chance to have the ability to just choose to go first, and had to like watch that coin, in slow motion in the air. Like, did I just blow like my chance at winning Worlds? Which both of us had previous second place finishes, and so we knew that whoever was getting second here was going to be, a little bit disappointed because it's just stacking on second place victories. But fortunately, luck was with me that day. That's what you need sometimes.
You
So,
you talk
just real
about.
quick, sorry, just real quick, David. I'll say, since most of our viewers are collectors, I'll give a little bit more context to exactly what you mean there. So normally in a match of Pokemon, when you're playing best of three, whoever loses a game gets to choose to go first in the next game in the series of three. But when time is called, it came down to a sudden death game three. And for sudden death, when David's talking about a coin flip, it's a literal coin flip. It's instead of the loser of game two choosing to go first in game three, you do flip an actual coin to see who gets to choose, because you're then playing, a one prize game rather than laying out your full 6 prize setup. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to people in a lot of other games, because I think Pokemon is one of the only games that plays timed top cuts. Like, basically every other game will play timed matches for Swiss still, but the majority of them will play untimed top cut to finals. But that's what David means by the literal coin flip. I think I remember Puka on commentary, because I have watched even just like that game a few times. It's such good commentary and such a good VOD on YouTube. I'm going to put the link in the description of this one, even just for the game three. Puka said it was literally about 30 seconds you needed. If you conceded 30 seconds earlier, it would have gone that way. But as it happened, it went the way it kind of should have done.
Right. No, you bring it back to memory, because I conceded. It was while we were shuffling that time was called, right?
Yes.
Just like you said, I would have gotten to if we had our hands set up before time was called, I would have been able to choose. But it was literally, I conceded. I'd sort of judged the time ish right, and then we were shuffling, getting ready, and then time was called.
So the rule was, if time got called before you'd placed your basic Pokemon, I think was the actual cutoff.
Could announce it.
But then the time actually got called after you'd conceded, and while you guys were shuffling up for game three. It was tense. It was tense in the room. It's still tense watching the video.
Yeah, what kind of entertainment value to the max. So I'm a man
absolutely.
of the people, making it exciting.
I'll tell you, the matches the matches on YouTube in 3 different videos, because it's from so long ago so didn't allow videos more than about 15 minutes. So they have the 3 different games. But I will link game 3 in the comments. It's just it's so good to rewatch.
Good. I think people really should, especially after watching David on the podcast. I'm going to tell you something just about time. Again, I just happened to have this conversation recently, and it sort of integrates with what we're talking about. But Tord told me that he lost the first place. He lost the championship by 3 seconds. It was a matter of 3 seconds in his match that he looked back on, and he said, if I had waited 3 more seconds, knowing that time was going to get called, I would have had the last turn. And Dan, you could explain this, but when time gets called in a match, it's like 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And whoever gets 5 or 3, that odd number last call, has the advantage. And because he didn't wait the 3 seconds, didn't note it, didn't see it, and they would have called at some point, he made a move that ended up costing him not getting the last move in the last game. So it's really the level of how many different things you need to be concentrating on. And he wasn't making excuses. He was just telling it like it is. He just he just didn't realize what was going on at that specific second.
Yeah, to explain that, the way it is, it's whenever time is called, whoever's turn it is currently is classed as turn 0, and then there's turn 1, 2, 3 passing back. So whoever gets turn 3 is the last person to go. So ideally you want time to be called during your opponent's turn, so they have their current turn and they have turn 2, and then basically it means that when time is called, if it's called in your opponent's turn, they probably have 1.5 turns, because they're halfway through their turn. They maybe haven't been playing as though this is going to be their second to last turn, whereas you get your full fresh 2 turns and you get the last turn. Obviously, in a game like the finals, where it's single elimination, you can't have a draw. Like in Swiss, a lot of times it will just end up as a draw, but in single elimination, if it is I think it's like prizes, tiebreakers, something like that. If you're tied on maybe prizes, you keep going until someone else takes a prize. But yeah, Toad was in a position where if he had waited that 3 more seconds, then I think the time would have been called during Vance's turn. Vance would have had turns 0 and 2. Toad would have had turns 1 and 3, but as it happened, it worked out the other way around. So Vance got like an extra turn after Toad, which is what let Vance take the victory. So the game didn't reach its conclusion. It was, I think it is down to a number of prizes that were taken.
Right. So, David, can you talk? People have such a poor opinion of me in so many ways. Nobody likes me. Nobody respects anything. I'm just like the guy that's chasing around in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm behind the corners, and I'm trying to buy the Gobstopper thing, and all that. I'm that like slinky old guy. So you in the past, when I've had the pleasure of having you on a podcast, you actually spoke favorably of me buying your card, your world championship card at the time. And of course, things were a lot less expensive back then, but back then it was a considerable sum. So can you mention, just so maybe a new generation of folks won't despise me as much, about what you did with that money, and what that money allowed you to do at the time?
Yeah. So I mean, the big thing is again back then, right? When you won Worlds, you just got a scholarship. So like to a 16-year-old or to probably most people who won, like sometimes that money could be put to direct use, but again, it's not like you get a buyer's satisfaction in a way. Like you can't do anything for fun with that money. Like it just goes towards whatever schooling you're going to pursue, which is great, and all. I'm glad Pokemon gave at least something. But yeah, getting selling the cards was obviously, like, to me at the time, I didn't need these physical representations of victory, right? Like, so I had the trophy if that's what I cared about keeping, and I had the memories and I had the knowledge that I was like had succeeded. So to me, I was like, I don't need these things anymore. So like selling them and getting, even a big lump sum at the time, like 5K for a 16-year-old, that's a pretty big amount of money. And being able to use that directly towards something, that was meaningful, which for me, it was within the next year or two, I used it towards like a Europe trip with some high school classmates and stuff. And so the memories that I got from that, being able to like pay my way towards that with stuff I had won from these world championships, was like that was very special and meaningful, and that gave me a lot more satisfaction than keeping the cards would have. Obviously, had had any of us known Pokemon would be this crazy, you keep those as an investment nowadays, and I'm sure people like either keep them or just sell them immediately for crazy sums of money. But that's no one had any idea how Pokemon would just absolutely explode over the next 15 years for sure. But getting, for like me, again, the same reason I'm kind of selling this trophy now, like I do hope it sells for more than $100. So I'll feel pretty bad about giving it away for that. But if I can get just something for it, I'm like, well, I'm gonna immediately, I'm not just gonna put that into my like a house fund or something where it disappears. I'm gonna take that and maybe use that to fund getting back into the game for a year. Like say, okay, I have this sum of money, I'm gonna go buy a deck and use this towards my trips for the year. I'm gonna immediately turn around and use it, convert it to something that gives me more value, right? Like experiences and stuff.
And so I know the other thing they did for you back then, was you were lucky enough to have a deck made, a product actually that was sold in stores, the World Deck Championship deck, for you. So I always like when you talk about that and that process. And then I think maybe they gave you a few as well. But maybe talk about that, and then do tell us about what's in the auction from your past, and how folks can look at that and find it and bid on it, etc.
Yeah. So do they not make those? They don't print the decks anymore. Is that not a thing?
They do. They still pick four decks for each
Okay. Yeah. So same system where, like, even when I was second, actually, I got lucky enough to have it, because usually I believe by default they do like masters first and second, and then kind of go down from there. But if there's any repeats of decks, obviously they don't do it. So there's a lot of repeats that year. And so I believe the second place masters was a repeat of like the junior or senior or something. So they did my second place deck, which I always feel bad about, because at the time, the second place deck, that's not like a deck that is very obvious how to use. So people probably buy these decks and they're like, oh, I just evolve these guys and like attack or whatever. And it had such a convoluted, weird, messed up stall strategy that like no one who buys it has any idea how to play it. So kids are probably just like, this deck sucks. Like, I don't even enjoy this. So Pokemon probably muffed a little bit on their part by producing that one, but I'm glad it's out there. And then so 2011, my deck is also out there. A little bit more of a straightforward concept, although I'm sure people still have room to mess it up because it's not obvious the order in which you're supposed to be attacking with certain guys and how you're supposed to do the trades the way that it was engineered specifically to trade with the other decks in the meta at the time. But getting those printed is honestly like, yeah, the coolest part of it to me, because I was able to like go to Target with my buddies and we would like, buy the deck and we'd go to the checkout, and like one of the times my high school buddies were like coming to the checkout, the older lady, and he was like, this is him, and she just nodded her head. She's like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, mother must be very proud. Being able to have like that piece of history, I think, is the coolest part, because that's a mass-produced piece of history, right? And so I do still have some of each. The problem with the 2011 ones is they changed the packaging to these like crappy cardboard boxes that were just like, the adhesive that they used doesn't even work. So all of my packages are opened because they just kind of popped up with time. But the 2009 ones are in a cool plastic wrap, and it's like a much nicer seal. So I have one of those with the championship, or with the trophy that's in there, but I don't think that's the main draw to the to the lot. But yeah, within the lot, so it's only stuff from 2009. They stopped giving out the jackets, like you said, Dan. The thing's super cool, and I would wear it all the time if it said first place. But I just can't. Over the years, I have never been able to bring myself to go out in public wearing a jacket that says second place. I can't do it. So maybe one day I'll just make a custom jacket. I can always just have someone custom, print a thing on it. That'd be cool. But
if you get back into the game, you have to make some like big, like ridiculous, like Letterman style jacket with like 2011 world champion on the back.
Absolutely. I thought about getting that one, like just reupholstered, like have someone modify it or something. But I was like, yeah, it's probably easier to just make a new one. But yeah, I was curious if those don't look like they're getting a whole lot of traction right now. But I'm
sure
hoping maybe I'll post in some groups online and see if I can get a little more traction on in the next week or two. I'm curious to see if anyone's even interested in getting that one. Maybe I'll buy the jacket back for $20. Who knows?
They certainly will be. I would be shocked if the physical trophy and the jacket don't bring in 4-figure prices. Like I would be shocked if they go for less than 1,000. I mean, genuinely, like I know I talked about making real offers. Like if they go for less than 1,000, I'm like the jacket, especially if it goes for less than 1,000, I think I might get it. Like I think I might put in a bid around that mark on it because it just looks so sick.
Well, but you should talk about that too. I've handled trophies through the years, and people really aren't there. So talk about what it's made of. It looks really sharp. The second place one that you have in there, because it just looks different. Like some of the ones that were very early were really. Is it just acrylic? Is it other things more than that? Is it got some glass components? Maybe because that and the leather jacket are really unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point that I'd kind of forgotten. Is after I won 2011, right? They changed the trophy style to be like it is now, where it's like a Pikachu holding the thing, which I think is cute. But to me, it was never as iconic as like my trophies that I have now. My trophy that I have now looks like a more respectable trophy. It doesn't look like a cute Pokemon thing. It looks like a real, like you win it at some crazy sporting event or something, because it is a giant hunk of glass with like a Pokeball on top, and it looks like a fancy adult trophy or whatever. Like it's a cool. I think it's a cool, more majestic piece than the style that they do now. And so the second place is in that same style, just a little bit physically smaller, but it's still like that thing's heavy. It's a big. You can club someone with it for sure.
You should make sure. I was just reading Heritage's description, and if it doesn't say glass or something in there, describe the material, have them update that, because like I said, I've handled a lot of trophies, and I'll bet that those couple of years in there are very different in the composition and how and people wouldn't think that. Like There's some earlier ones that are more acrylic based, and they're nice, but they're nothing like what that looks like in the auction, which looks really unique and special. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll look into that. Yeah, I got a couple weeks here to see if it can garner a little more interest. I know it goes to like a physical auction at the end, so there will be like collectors on the trade floor being able to look at it in that case. So I'm hoping, when people see it, they're like, "Ooh, this is cool." But I don't know how many people are at this thing. I'm assuming I still need some more online activity on it in order to boost it up.
yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And the hats, I was just curious, did you sign the hat back in the day, or is the hat signed more today?
The hat was signed today. I was trying to decide whether to not sign it or sign it. I may have just lowered the value by signing it, but I chose to sign it today. I still have a World's 2011 one. The downside is they didn't give winner ones, so it's like I never want to wear it because I don't want to wear something that just says finalist. Like I want it to say winner. So I still have a 2011 winner ones. That's why these were kind of like my experiment to see like if any of these sold, had interest, then in the future I could sell some of the 2011 merch. Probably will never sell the 2011 trophy unless I'm like really desperate. But that's why I was like, I can see what happens with the 2009 one. Like I don't keeping track of two trophies is kind of a pain in the ass anyway. So, just having the one nice one, that's all I need.
What
Yeah,
you said
well,
about it being a more like professional style adult trophy, it's kind of a weird double edge because it's like that, but it seems to appeal less to Pokemon fans when it's not as obviously Pokemon. Because I remember back in the day that trophies like that, I think the world's trophies, a few people tried to sell them or put them if there was any interest, and no one cared. But like the cities, states, nationals trophies that had Pokemon on them were selling high because they had it was the year when they did the promo cards of cities, states, nationals will be an evolution line, like they did the Shinx, Luxio, Luxray. So the trophies that had those Pokemon in them, collectors of that Pokemon or people who liked that Pokemon were all over those. But then it seemed like no one was after the world's ones. But I'm hoping that now we're more at a point in the market where people will appreciate the where it doesn't look, like you say, more mature, like less obviously Pokemon, not just a Pikachu.
Right.
We'll see how it goes, but like I say, I don't think you'll have any problem getting a decent
Yeah, I
amount
mean,
for
part
it.
of the reason I decided to see what would happen is because I was contacting Heritage and they sent me a previous auction. They sold a second place, same style. So, because this one was the 2010. So, second place, 2010, mine second place, 29. That sold for like 13,000. They still have the listing you can pull up on Heritage. And that was just in 2021. So I was like, I'm hoping I can get, I don't know that maybe that was a freak occasion, but I was like, if there's that much interest, I was hoping to
ask so
get
so
it.
something else. If I'm trying not to interrupt, it's been really rough internet wise. So again, my sincere apologies. I'm trying to jump in because I can't figure out when you guys are stopping talking. But David, what I want to say is there's a lot of trophy collectors, and it's not one-offs. There's a lot of folks that try to collect every single trophy. That's kind of what they do. So I also encourage you, just from an advice standpoint, Heritage is pretty good about trying to work with you in this situation. I would definitely have them see if they'd be willing in a confidential basis, them, not you, to reach out to the person who bought the one from 2010 or whatever, and at least let that person know that yours is up for auction. Because again, auctions are such a funny thing. When your focus is there, and then all of a sudden you go away for a year and their focus isn't there, and you miss some things that you might have wished you'd seen. So that person might say, "Gosh, I've got the 2010. Now I want the 9 or whatever, whenever it was in the 9." So that would give them a chance to maybe get in on this as well, and if somebody that has the capital behind it to be able to do that. So. Just something to think about, so you don't have somebody who'd actually, it'd be a win-win if they were actually interested and just accidentally were going to miss it. So, but yeah, it definitely, those auctions are meant to have most of their action at the end. So hopefully you'll have great success doing that. I have one more question, completely off topic, but as a person that has I have mental illness around over exercising. So whereas it's called what people do is girls stick toothbrushes down their mouth, which is a form of bulimia and stuff to try to purge calories. And a lot of guys, they actually have classified this as a different form of the same thing when you're over exercising to try to burn calories because of guilt, overeating, and all of the things that I've dealt with my whole life. So I try to get to the gym 5 days a week, and I do way too much time in the gym because of my mental illness. So how often do you go to the gym, and how much do you and what do you try to do with your natural bodybuilding? I do more of a I would never say I've been natural because I'm not natural at anything, but in the natural bodybuilding for a 30 something, what do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I've got friends who, they want to, lose weight or something like that, and they'll ask me things like, David, how do you enjoy going to the, like, how do you, dedicate the time to it or whatever? And it is tough because again, it's like I don't even think of it right as exercising. It's just like something I enjoy doing. And so it's, me putting in that time of day is at probably the sacrifice of some other things, but it's not any other things that I would rather be doing anyway. So for me, I train, my weightlifting sessions are about 2 hours and 4 to 5 days a week. And then my cardio is usually like not that much. It's like 30 minutes every few days. So it's, sometimes scales up or scales down, but in total, like, I mean, but then think of time commuting to the gym, obviously, and stuff like that. Like it is a pretty decent time sink. But it is, yeah, it's for me, it's being in there, obviously people talk about like when they enjoy exercising or something like that, they talk about it as a form of therapy, and that, or just like, and they enjoy it. And for me, that's definitely what it is, where it's like, this is my hobby. Like I don't go in there and hate my time. It's like I go in there and I love every like second of stuff that I'm doing. A lot of it for me is rest time. So it's not like I'm not doing like circuit training for 2 hours. I'm doing, like a heavy set, resting 5 minutes, 10 minutes sometimes, and then doing another like heavy set. So it's certainly not like that strenuous compared to what like real athletes are doing in like actual top levels of sports and stuff like that. So I would never say that what I do particularly is like much of a strain on my body compared to like, again, just what like athletes have to actually do. And I also like, I've never been great about doing any more cardio than I have to. Let's say it that way. So like if I'm, going to like run on the treadmill with a stairmaster, like I'm doing it for the time that's in my program, and then I'm done. Like I'm not spending any extra time on that. So what I love is really the weightlifting component, the progressing, of these movements, adding more weight, adding more reps, etc.
And you're doing one body part a week typically?
So for me, it's more of a blend. So they're spaced out a little bit, but it's usually body parts are all combined over the course of 2 or 3 training sessions. So then like there's usually only 3 to 4 days before the same body parts getting hit again in some capacity. So like for people who are into bodybuilding, they'll recognize like a push pull legs schema, and that's mainly what my coach has me doing. And but things are modified or tweaked, or certain body parts like a delt or a bicep, can take a lot more punishment. So I might be doing those every day in small amounts rather than waiting to only do them once a week. But something that's a little bigger, like a leg day, that only comes around every 4 to 5 days, not quite once a week, but certainly a little bit more time in between, so I can actually recover and be ready for the next one. But that's just the way that I do it. A lot of people have success doing like stuff every single day in lighter doses, right? So there's so many ways, and learning about, this is obviously a tangent, but like I've been investing a lot of my extracurricular time learning about becoming, learning the skills that I could use if I was to become a coach or start training other people. So learning about the science behind, hypertrophy, nutrition, all that kind of stuff, just because it all interests me. Whether or not I use any of it, who knows, but I just love learning it. And so same as Pokemon, right? That's what I'll tie it back a little bit, is like when you have something you love that you want to invest the time in and you want to use the brain power to learn about it, I think that's where a lot of the success from Pokemon can come. And that's the groove I would need to find was that I would need to want to love spending my time learning about the current meta, practicing, etc. Um, but it will the interesting part will be balancing it with, because I don't ever want to lose my hobby in bodybuilding right now for at least the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm going to have to see how I can dedicate time to each. Because obviously the downside to bodybuilding and Pokemon tournaments is like it's a lot more work to try to schedule in a whole day of Pokemon while also like bringing all my meals with me and still finding time to train either that day, really early in the morning or late at night, or somehow schedule rest days around it to have the time to play. So we'll see what I can manage.
It
I
would
think
be
I can do
so
both.
intimidating at a Pokemon tournament, though, if you were just playing cards with
Exactly.
one hand and just like doing reps with the other.
There was some pretty
eating your
big,
vegetables.
scary guys.
Yeah.
Everybody's eating the nacho cheese, chips, and you're doing your cucumbers and your protein, something like that.
Yeah.
When will you know? When will you know that you're ready for your first natural bodybuilding competition?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'll probably feel like I never will be, and so I do pay a coach to just tell me what to do, just so I don't go off the rails on my own, doing my own thing. And so whenever he tells me he thinks I have a chance, and I think the guy I work with is very honest in the sense that he works with a lot of actual high level guys, so he knows that I'm like I'm down here. So if he ever says like, hey, I think we're at a stage where you can do decently enough in this local competition, I'll be like, all right, let's do it. So I don't know, at least another year or so is my expectation, probably two. My 30s is when I'm eyeing, like a lot of people are actually better in their 30s because it's sort of a sport where you need the time for the muscle to just develop, and it looks different once you're like in your 30s versus in your 20s. So
Right.
I'm curious, yeah, if I stick at it again, delayed gratification in a very long term sense, I might have some success within like 5 to 10 years.
It's unfortunate that they moved the location for NAIC to New Orleans this year, because here in Columbus we used to have like the
Right.
the Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilding and
Yeah.
then NAIC, like basically back to back weekends. Sometimes they were really close.
Yeah.
So if they hadn't
I
moved it,
remember
you
that.
could have just come and stayed in Columbus for a couple of weeks, done the bodybuilding one week and then NAIC the week after.
Exactly. They've been moving like the Natural Olympia. They've been moving around to like I think it's, or even the regular Olympia, from Vegas to Orlando to usually back and forth. But I know those are also locations that Pokemon sometimes eyes up. So maybe when Pokemon return stateside, things will align a little differently. But I can't imagine, that'd be a lot of stress if I was trying to compete
Yeah.
and like both at the same time at like the pinnacle of the levels for each. I think it would be I would much prefer, like, I'm gonna have to strategize it to where, like, yeah, whatever show I end up doing I don't want to coincide directly with like, yeah, trying to spend a lot of time on Pokemon right on the same like month time span.
Get one out
I
the
just
way.
want to say I wish you the best of luck with all of that. I've been lifting since I was, not in any professional capacity, of course, but since I was 15, 16 years old. Always it's in, I have to say I really don't enjoy it, which is unfortunate, but I definitely have to do it. So it's just that compulsion. And so I know how much work, dedication, effort, 24/7, 7 days a week it takes to be really good. And I just have one more question for you today, and that is cards. Cards. Do you collect any cards? Do you have any cards? Do you keep your old decks? What do you have from the standpoint of something that you look at as a collector of Pokemon, if anything, that you still say, hey, I still have it. It's pretty cool, if there's anything like that, other than I know you have those decks that they gave you for your awards that they produced for you.
Yeah, in terms of stuff I actually own, I own very little, and I've done regular purges of my collection when I was growing too much. So like even right after I won Worlds or a little before, I had done like sold a bunch of stuff off in bulk. Just like I was like, I don't need them anymore, and that's still kind of my mentality. Is I really don't hold on to like the physical cards much. I just care about the experience, and I only care about what's competitive at the time. So like I did just last year, I sorted through all the cards I did have so that I could go and like sell them at some point and start to fund new modern cards. I still need to do that, but I went through, sorted with a buddy. The best one we found was that I actually just had in like a box of was an Umbreon Star from like those pop packs. So that was probably the best one that I was like uncovered, that I was like, oh, this is actually worth something. It's not probably PSA 10, but it's also not beat up or anything like that. So I'm sure I'll sell that at some point. But I honestly, like winning worlds, I owned one card of that deck, one and a half. I owned one Embor, and I owned one half of the Rayquaza Deoxys legend card. So I have those two cards, physical cards. I still have like at the front of my binder, is like these are sort of my memory cards, but the rest of the deck I gave back to people. So I don't have much of it. But yeah,
well,
I really don't have much.
The people wouldn't even let you just keep the cards that you'd won worlds with.
Yeah. I was there like, oh, I need those cards back. Those are my cards. Like, yeah. That's fair.
I need to take this deck to cities next week. I don't care that you won worlds with it. Take it apart.
Exactly. Those Embors were, valuable at the time. So yeah.
Oh, you playing the Magnezone, right? Or did the Magnezone Prime rotate right after the tournament?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That might have been where the rotation hit, was getting rid of the Magnezone Prime. But the Embor kept going for a little while. I remember in Standard.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in general, like I just don't really like collect. That's just it doesn't hit my dopamine the same way. Like I like looking at the trophy due to the memories that it represents. But in terms of cards, like honestly, if I could just not own any cards and I could just go to a tournament and people just hand me the deck I want, and someone else builds it for me every time, oh, that'd be perfect. That'd be the way to live. I'd give them all the winnings back. I'd be like, here's all the packs, that I got. I don't need them. I just want to just give me the deck each time I need it, and I'm good.
Right.
I mean, if you get your testing in online, you might be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Get the testing in online. If you do it enough, you might get on one of those store sponsorships where you can just say to the store, like, hey, I'm going to go to the tournament. I'll weigh you. All you have to do is you have to give me the deck I want to play for the event. I'll give it back to you afterwards. I'll wear your store shirt. Get some
cool concept. Yeah.
Get some fame in from the streaming. I think that's a big thing for a lot of the players who are sponsored too, is not having to worry about acquiring cards, because if they are doing all of their testing online, they don't need any physical cards. And if they're sponsored by these big stores that have huge inventories, it works out for the stores, because they know if they do well with it at the tournament, the price of the cards are going to go up and they're going to sell a lot more. So
here's my one counterpoint to that is for testing, I don't need any cards either, because I'll take a whole stack of like 60 energy and just write the names of the cards I want on it. But then come the tournament, it's sometimes a little stressful. Like I remember running around asking people, like, do you have this? Do you have this? Like, I don't really want to have to deal with that,
I mean, that's not a worry nowadays. Like you can get every card that you need for playing is so much more available nowadays, because of the fact that in the sets, the rarest cards are these alt art fancy versions of cards that have less rare versions. But like back in the day, Luxray Level X was not only the card you wanted to play, it was one of the rarest cards relative to that set. Right. So, I mean, obviously people weren't opening anywhere near the amount of boxes and stuff that they're opening now, but it was at the time, it was like the rarest card in the set is also the one I need. Whereas with nowadays, if you want to play Lugia, it's like, oh no, the rarest and most expensive card in the set is the $200 alt art version of Lugia, but I can buy this $20 version, and every store has 100 copies in stock because they were opening boxes to get the fancy version. So even if you didn't have a network of like lending you cards and stuff, it's very, very easy to get cards and build decks compared to back then.
I love that. That's what I've been waiting for, honestly. As much as I might like not enjoy the power creep element or the the lack of evolution sometimes, if they're finally just producing like playable cards and then making the rare collector stuff, just alt versions, that's awesome. That's like everything I've always wanted. Just make it easy for me to play,
So you say you miss evolutions. Does that mean I can get you in on the my campaign to unnerf Rare Candy and reprint Broken Time Space? Because that's what will get me playing. Unnerf Rare Candy, reprint Broken Time Space, and I'll play Pokemon again. I love that Jumpluff deck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I enjoy a bit of a slower pace to to the game because it's, you know, you just get a little bit more like strategic time to develop strategies. Like I didn't like, even when I was playing, when they're, you know, you had like Darkrai level X at times, like that was just, I didn't like those metas as much. So I know that's kind of still what it goes towards, but you know, I won't cast my judgment until I actually like try to play. I won't just be too curmudgeon-y. But
That's going to happen
I wish there was a
automatically
way
when
to
you get in
start.
your 30s. You have no choice. By the time you get to me, that's all you have left. I want to go out. I want to play the game as well. I just want to cheat. So I need people. I need sort of something in my ear. I want to. And by the way, I'm not going to buy the cheap versions of the cards. I'm getting the most expensive versions. I want all my cards in my deck to be $200 or more, just so I can like be different than everyone else and have a more valuable deck when I lose. That's why. So.
Hell yeah. I remember playing against some people who had like, yeah, the gold studded, like all the super shiny versions. But honestly, like some of those ones are just kind of a pain in the ass to even like shuffle because the cards physically like warp and feel different. So
Yeah, you have to either fully bling out your deck or lowest
yeah.
rarity your deck because all of the foils pringle out.
Yeah. I just that's why I just keep it basic. That's probably the only thing I actually still need to go through and keep is I need to make sure I pull out like this is how I show my kind of coolness, right? Is like I need to go make sure I pull out my like base set switches or like base set energy kind of thing. Like make sure that, you know, if I come back with cards that have always existed, like make sure I got the most old school ones
Yeah,
possible. So you know, that'll be my little, you know, bragging right thing.
Well,
Any trainers that are from the E series, I
Right.
always look nice. E series
Oh yeah.
trainers and decks always look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we see you back sometime. I know it's a big commitment and it's hard to figure out the time. That seems like the older you get, the more responsibilities life just starts throwing at you, especially when you have something that you're so passionate about as well in the bodybuilding. So please tell our audience one more time, when is the auction? So I'll just tell them, you know, you can always go to Heritage. You just type in Heritage Auctions and you're able to browse. So when you know, without even setting up accounts or anything, and take a look and look for the Pokemon items. But when is the auction supposed to happen, David?
Yeah, so it's the live bidding's online now through October 20th. And then it's like October 20th at 3 p.m. Central Time because it's in Texas is when like the floor auction goes, you know, goes live or whatever. And so I'll be streaming that. They said they have a live stream for us. So I'll be watching because I'll be you know, praying. Um, but yeah, so that's another 12 days of online action that to hopefully make my heart rate go down a little bit if it can, you know, value can rise enough by then.
Yeah, and
I'll
I've
I'll
only
I'll
I've
throw in my bids. I'll throw in any relatively small bids in the online part. But then I'll be in Lille when the auction's actually ending. It'll be the middle of the night, so I'm sure I'll wake up and find out that I haven't won anything, which I'm expecting because it will be a travesty if I win anything with the prices I'm planning on putting on them.
and I encourage
You'll owe
folks to
me after.
watch, you know, an auction. If you've never watched one of the auctions, I watched my first one a few months ago when we were dealing with the uncut sheet. Previous podcasts describe that. So, but it's just a fantastic thing to at least watch once. Watch when it's live and they're describing the items and there's action going on sort of towards the end. So, anyways, from my perspective, I can't say how much it's always wonderful to see you. Um, David. It's just, you know, it's you've been a part of my history and a fantastic part, and I don't remember a lot. When you get to be my age and you're worried about dementia setting in and all the things I worry about every single day, which I hope it's not. I hope I'm just too busy and things don't settle. But I absolutely will never forget you and your playing and watching you and a little bit of a fan club around you. And I don't care if you like the word or not, Dan, the emo, you guys, I don't even know what emo freaking means. I'm going to stay with the flamboyancy and you were what you were and what you probably still are in your own ways. You were one of a kind. And it's hard to say in a history of all these folks what it is to be one of a kind, someone that's truly memorable, not only for your humility and your, you know, like you said, you had a competitive drive, but you were very reserved, you know, your personality style at the time. And maybe that's when you were gaining that confidence, your success in the hobby, and just your kindness to take the time and to spend. Even every time I call you, it's like, will you talk with me on a podcast? And you're like, sure, absolutely. So you deserve everything, all the best. And I'm glad to hear your life is going wonderful. And I just hope it stays in the trajectory, even begins to blossom that much more. So
wish you were this nice to me.
Thank you.
no, because
you need to win worlds
because
first.
you're still in your
yeah.
flamboyant stage, okay?
That's
With
right.
the hair and everything, Mr. Emo. Go put some
All right.
lipstick on. We'll talk next week, okay?
Yeah. Hey, I'll take it. I appreciate all that. That's very kind. Thank you.
And I'll remind everyone, the links to all of the heritage items are going to be in the description of the video, so you can just go down there and click, and it'll take you straight to David's items.
And Dan is, like he said, he's going to put the videos in of those last matches that David had for the World Championship.
Yeah, so, I'll put the link to the Top Cut video in the description too, so you can go and watch. Even if you just go and watch the Game 3, it's a great game. It's obviously really tense, and the commentary is on point. Remember when you're seeing, if you do go and watch that video again, shout out to the guys that were doing that. Shout out to the Top Cut. The fact that they put that on fully off their own back with no real backing by TPCI or anything, and that they basically led to the streaming and stuff we have today. So go put some respect on the Top Cut. Go watch that. Go watch David's game. It's incredible. Yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff in the description.
And David, if you ever come to Vegas, either alone or with your girlfriend, and you do not find me, look me up, contact me, I will hunt you down and kill you. So understand, good. I need you to come and see me whenever you come this way for a quick jaunt. I always got a place for you to stay. I can help you not get any more poor just through a shuttle service and a room in a comfortable home. So it's always an open invite for you. Okay.
I appreciate that, because if I go to Vegas, I'm losing money at the card table. So we'll have to account for those savings. I can look at my trophy card and be like, oh, this is my child.
Yes. Good. You got your gambling fees covered with not having to pay for the hotel. So
there you go.
All right, cool.
Can confirm David's spare room is very comfortable.
Did you stay here? Did you come here once?
Yes. Stayed there for. It was very, very quick in and out. I stayed there for I was in Vegas for less than 48 hours from plane down to plane up. But yeah, last year, remember
I told you. I don't even know who you are at this point. So everything is my mind is shot.
I was bringing cards, so you probably forget me, but you'll remember all the cards popping up just on a certain day.
Let me just hold on 1 sec, okay? Honey, get the mimosas started. The brain's screwed up again. Okay. All right, it's all good. So thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate our audience letting us find wonderful folks like this, and we go off format, but we think it's worth it when we get a chance to have someone like Mr. David Cohen on our podcast. So.
Yeah, it was great catching up with you again, David. I will say to our regular viewers, obviously we didn't know too far in advance that this interview was happening, so comments from the last couple of episodes, we'll probably try and address some of them next week. I think next week is just going to be me and David again, and then I know for a few weeks after that it will probably just be me and David, because I'll be traveling around Europe and there's no way I can edit 3 video streams on my laptop. 2 will be difficult enough. And then we'll probably get some more guests once I'm back stateside after my trip.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, feels like a good place to end it. It's great talking to the two of you, as always. And everyone watching, hopefully you enjoyed. Don't forget to check out everything in the description. And if Cohen does start streaming at some point, we'll be sure to mention it in a future podcast. Go and tell him. Everyone just go tell him on, I don't know, are you even on any social medias, David? I don't think you are.
Yeah. I'm on, I got the Facebook still. I got the Instagram, although I don't know a lot of people on there.
Yeah.
I'm a part of it. I don't really tweet. I guess that's the modern thing, and I'm not really on there.
I mean, I was going to say people should go and all tell you to start streaming and start doing it on Twitch, but Facebook is not a great place to do that, because Facebook is more of a private social media rather than if you were Instagram active, they can all just go and spam comments.
I see him. He's got a cigar and a Pokemon shirt. That's what to look for. That's the guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll link the Instagram in the comments too, and you'll go tell him he should start streaming. Get back into Pokemon, start up a nice YouTube channel playing on Pokemon Live.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. My future career, maybe.
There we go. It really could be. People will be interested, I'm telling you. All right. I think we've tried to end this about 3 or 4 times now, so I'll say thanks to everyone for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Leave us some nice comments, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person, featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to